Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the Bond of Love interview series on behalf of the Vaishnavi Ministry. My name is Bhaktivedanta Dasi, and today we have the honor to welcome Govardhan dasi. Welcome. Nice to see you. So I'd like to share a little bit about Govardhan dasi's bio and her history. So in the summer of 1972, at the age of 16, Govardhan met a devotee book distributor in her hometown. And 6 months later, she left school and moved into the Edinburgh temple. A stay at the newly opened Bhaktivedanta Manor followed, then service at Paris temple. And by 1975, at New Mayapur, France, where Srila Prabhupada installed his only Krishna Balarama deities outside of Vrindavana, Govardhan was engaged as a pujari. After a full day of service, along with caring for her first child, when she closed her eyes at night, she would see her lordships, Sri Sri Gaura Nitai. These are happy days. Around 1979, she started her Bharatanatyam and drama project with the children at New Mayapur, and as time went by, she moved between the UK and France with this service. She danced for various programs, including ISKCON educational services, for some years. Around 1995, Govardhan enrolled in university and achieved degrees in medieval studies, education, Latin, French, and German. She taught at Watford Grammar School for Boys for 8 years, and then continued part-time teaching in the north of England, where she helped open a Namhata in 2013. She presently volunteers for a charity which helps sufferers from alcoholic abuse. She is happily married and lives in an idyllic village in Norfolk, UK. So welcome, Govardhan dasi.
Thank you.
So great to have
Thanks
you.
for reading that. That was just so wonderfully read.
Oh, well, thank you. Coming from someone who has studied languages extensively, so thank you.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. So I would like to ask my first question, and you contributed to the book, Bond of Love. And so why did you choose to participate in the book?
I got to participate in the book because my husband and I went to Mayapur in 2010. I think that Vishaka and Malati Prabhus were just at the tail end of getting people into the book. And as usual, I didn't put myself forward. And I think that's sometimes a feminine nature. Women's nature is, hang back a bit, whatever reason. So somehow or another, I found out about it and ended up doing an interview with Vishaka Prabhu, and that's how I got to be in the book. And I think it's very important, even though I needed a bit of a push. I think it's very important for the women's, the feminine perspective to be included in the history of ISKCON. This is something that's just come to me now, which I want to share. This is something that probably most people don't know because I got it from an Italian interview with Ali Krishna Devi Dasi. This is about the feminine, right? So Ali Krishna Devi Dasi, I'm shooting into this. I know it's still question number one, but Ali Krishna Devi Dasi, she joined in Italy. She's Italian, and she may have joined in Paris, that's right, and gone to Italy later on with the first devotees to go there. In any case, she's in Paris, and Yogeshwara Prabhu introduces her to Srila Prabhupada. And he introduces this girl, and he says, she's translating your books into Italian. Prabhupada said, oh, she knows Italian. So Yogeshwara goes, she is Italian, Srila Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada said, in terms of the translation that she was doing, he said, that is an excellent use of the feminine intelligence. A beautiful thing to bear in mind.
Beautiful. It reminds me of the verse from the Gita that says, of women, I am fine speech, something like that. That there is something feminine about the language and translation and that perspective that you're sharing that's so important for women to be included, especially in a book.
Yeah. So that was a great honor to be in the book. And then I ended up in this interview because, again, I didn't put myself forward because I saw something on the internet once. Anybody that's prepared to get interviewed, put your name here. But I just hung back from that somehow. And then I was at the manor, and Nirmala Prabhu was there, and she liked my offering, and she asked me to do an interview. But while I'm on the topic of women being a little bit shy and retiring, I've heard Pranada Prabhu talking about how the other devotees, the younger devotees, if they want to get association or anything, from Prabhupada's disciple ladies, they should come forward and do it, because I think we're ready and waiting, but we just don't put ourselves forward. So please come forward if you want to talk to any of us. I think I can speak for everyone. Of course, a very active ladies probably have quite a busy schedule, but I'm sure there are very many of us that would happily meet up with you.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you're saying, that for women to step forward. And so this connects to the next question, which is, how did Prabhupada engage you in Krishna service? So stepping forward in some way to offer some service, but also how did Prabhupada engage you?
That's a very interestingly phrased question, and it reminds me of something that happened to me just a couple of weeks ago. I was at a Rath Yatra, and a friend of mine, she was introducing me to the gentleman she came with, and she said, "Oh, this is Govardhan, she's Prabhupada's disciple." And this gentleman said to me, "How did you meet Prabhupada?" It's like you don't have to meet Prabhupada before you join the movement. And that was true in the day, and it's true now. I mean, I joined in 1973 at the beginning of the year, and already, you didn't get to meet Prabhupada personally. I luckily, very blessedly, was given my Gayatri mantra personally by Srila Prabhupada, but it's not like you needed to meet Srila Prabhupada in person to join the movement. And he's actually here. You meet him through his books, through his disciples, through his movement, and he really is there. So there we are. So how did he engage me? I've brought some pictures along which showed when I started to do Bharatanatyam dancing. Now, I want to give you some background here. We were, in 1979, I think it probably was, there was a program, because I was living in France then. There was a program in Strasbourg, which we went to, and the devotees had invited a Bharatanatyam dancer. And I had never seen that before. There was nobody in the movement doing Bharatanatyam, as far as I know, except this lady called Satarupa. Prabhupada had two disciples who were called Satarupa. One was the model, French, well, she's Danish, but she was a model for Paris Match and all that, and I knew her personally. And later I got to meet the other Satarupa, who was in America at this time and doing her Bharatanatyam dancing. So I didn't know any devotees that were doing this thing. It's very popular now, but then there was just nobody. So I see this lady dancing in Strasbourg, and I really, really want to learn that. But it's like living in a temple and all that. You weren't allowed to just go off and do a project. How would you get there? Where would the money come from? What about your service and all that? So I only actually realized yesterday that the reason how I got to do this service is through a series of misfortunes, apparent misfortunes, that I was sent on sankirtan, and I didn't make it. I didn't want to be away from my children. So I went back to my husband, who I was supposed to leave. I won't say a lot about this. Certain elements made it apparently necessary. And in any case, I got punished for that. And I was sent to England. Now, when I was in England, I went to Rath Yatra in Birmingham. And then I prayed to Lord Jagannath, how can I do this thing? I want to learn dancing. And I went up to speak to Kirti Raj about a different topic. He was at that time active at Chaitanya College. This is a temple in England that we don't have anymore. And I was telling him I was missing my husband. And he said, well, why don't you just go back? So I did that. And as a result, and this is my first husband, he's recently passed away. This is jolly complicated, but you can re-listen to get the sequence if you want to know it. Basically, he worked for Spiritual Sky, and he gave me a little job sticking labels onto this is my ex-husband, sticking labels onto the perfume bottles. I'll show you my hands there. I'm doing this. And I got enough money to go to Paris on a Saturday or Sunday, I forget, and have a dance lesson, pay for the lesson, and come back again on the train. And he kind of looked after the kids, and he was very positive about that. And so actually, I want to thank him very much for that, because if it weren't for him, how would it have happened? And I hope he gets and got full benefit from whatever service I was able to do. So this
it seems
picture
that you were engaged in the service of dancing, and later on you danced for ISKCON educational services, and it inspired you. Seeing a dancer inspired you to want to dance for Krishna, and then you also took classes. And I can relate to the experience of seeing a Bharatanatyam dancer and feeling very enlivened and connected to the emotion, because I myself studied Bharatanatyam for quite a few years. And there is something very beautiful in the culture that is conveyed and the devotion that comes through in dance. So it seems that your ex-husband actually facilitated you to be able to take classes by doing a simple job, but ultimately you were able to work it out in such a way. You had such a passion and a fire to study dance. So you said that he recently passed away, yes? So it just it seems like you're sending off your goodwill and your gratitude to him for helping engage you in service.
Yeah, that's right. At Srila Prabhupada's, outside Srila Prabhupada's room is a big poster of my ex-husband, my first husband. If anyone wants to go and see that, they can just go to Prabhupada's room, look at the right, there he is. And there's that footage of Prabhupada installing Sri Sri Radha Gokulanda at the manor, and he's quite featured in that. I mean, I was there, but I don't see myself in the moving pictures, but he's in that quite a lot. So I really wish, I am grateful for the first time, actually, to the part he played. And it's funny because one of my favorite topics is the way that difficulties are actually Krishna's mercy. Now, this is not something that you can tell someone else if they're suffering, because that would not be compassionate. But for oneself, oftentimes you can think, you can think things through and think, wow, this would not have happened without him.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So this picture here, this is in 1993 or so, and this is at Indra Swami's program in Poland, and this is me at the beginning, showing what the different, you might know the dance, Jaya Janaki. I used to love that. Jaya Janaki Ramana. I love that. I love the song. And when I got teachers and stuff and various places getting lessons, and I just heard the music, I thought, this is it. I've got to follow this. Same as like when I joined the movement. It's like, I have to do this. I had other plans to get educated and stuff, but I had to do it. So this dance is about Sita Devi wearing a necklace. So this is like, and the guy that you can see, he's reading off in Polish what it is, what the. So that was that. This is me. I got these practice outfits, and I really used to like them. So I got a set of pictures of me wearing these outfits, practice ones, and they're pretty cool. I like them still. Of course, I don't have them anymore, and if I did have them, I would not fit into them. But it's nice to have the memory. And this is a pose which is Gopal. There's his cow. You know that from your dancing. And I was looking at it and thinking, what's the other hand doing? Because quite often you've got a stick in the other hand, because Gopal is like, herding the cows. But I seem to be doing this. He's holding his lunch. So that's that. This would be about 1990. The previous picture would be 93 or so as well. This is at Bhaktivedanta Manor. So by this time, I used to dance together with a few ladies. This is Shama Kund, and she was one of my pupils in at New Mayapur, one of the big girls, and she was in the Ramayana, which was a play that we did, which came off very well. And she went to India and got training, in India, and she was one of the people I used to dance with at the manor. And this was taken by Rohini Nandan, and it's quite a nice light because it's just the twilight at the manor, and there would be a big circus tent, where the festivities would be going on. And so a few of us, all grown-up women, we used to go on and do stuff there. This is also at the Manor. It's in 2001 or 2. And actually, I'm on the stage with a few girl pupils who I had been teaching. Yeah, that's really all I can say about that. Now, this is, I mentioned Satarupa, the Danish model that was in Paris Match and stuff. Well, her husband he had a project to photograph all the parts of New Mayapur, and this is the picture he took of me in my dance studio, which we used to call Salle de Théâtre, the theatre room. And those buildings are still there now, and someone's made their home in one of them, quite large, prefab buildings that got put up, and that's where our theatre room used to be. The little girl in the corner is the daughter of Harivilas Prabhu and Parijata. See, and they are, Prabhupada disciples, and Harivilas is very active. I think he's a guru and what have you. The other girl is the daughter of Ragini, who passed away a few years ago. And the father is a guy called Jayantakrit, who's now a sannyasi in a different Gaudiya branch. So these are the great souls I got to associate with every day. And we had mirrors, and we were both looking into the mirror. We had mirrors on the walls. It was pretty cool, actually. And this is the last one. This is taken in Germany. We used to travel about in Germany, and it's very early on. This is going to be in the 80s, mid-80s, and that's Kiki, my daughter. She got christened Kiki because her name is Nayaka, which means heroine. I don't mean the drug. I mean the feminine form of hero.
Of course.
Yeah, making that very clear. So the kids in Mayapur, they used to love her when she was a baby. They used to play with her and stuff, and they ended up calling her Naya Kiki because there's apparently a cartoon character on French telly who is called Kiki. So she's become Kiki. She's Kiki ever since, and she's grown up now. She's over 40 years old now.
It seems that Prabhupada engaged you in Krishna's service by allowing you to do this service of dance, not only performing yourself, but teaching, and also inspiring a whole generation of dancers to study, to train, and to share the culture of bhakti with large audiences. You showed a picture there of you dancing for the Polish tour. Is that correct? Because you said it was in Polish. The man was translated. It was at the Polish tour with Indradyumna Swami?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those, I mean, as far as I know, those are thousands of people in the crowd. And so many people can experience bhakti yoga immediately through that cultural experience and that presentation. So that service seems as very close and dear to your heart.
Absolutely, yeah. When looking back, it's a miracle that it could happen. It's a miracle that it could happen. So I'm very blessed by that, actually.
So what have you learned from other Vaishnavi stories in this book where they have shared about their experiences of Srila Prabhupada?
I've learned everything, from my godbrothers and sisters, in short. Everything. And I've learned particularly, I've just got a few excerpts that I've copied up, actually, from which I'm studying the book. So I'm copying down things that are talking to me. I've dug out a few here. So Krishna Vaisha, who is a friend of mine, she says in her offering, the disciple surrenders and takes on her personal, nuanced journey of many years to self-improvement. And that is just so on the button. So I love that. Then Janava Devi Dasi, who I've never met, she's quite a leader in the movement. She's quite an early devotee. And so she's talking about Srila Prabhupada. She said, at every moment, he remembered his spiritual master, and Prabhupada was proud of how merciful Lord Chaitanya is. Like that. And then, real humility is to have faith that Prabhupada can make a devotee out of us. That is Janava Devi Dasi. Another lady, Chitralekha Devi Dasi, who I don't know, she experienced Srila Prabhupada talking to the deities. and she tells them that it was an electric sort of experience that she witnessed. In Balagopal's entry, and I know Balagopal personally as well, she describes from a time before I joined, she said there was no tension between the men and women in her time. And that Prabhupada never chastised the women. That continued throughout. But never chastised the women because, again, women are different. Like Prabhupada said, like these scriptures are written from the part of the man. He said that, and I think men, they have to have a different approach with them. So I really would love to see, I love all these initiatives that are going on with the ladies now, because I think we have to find our place. We have to sort of, have our dignity and find our place and use our talents and our sensibilities, our sensitivity and our sensibilities and our nurturing potential. It's just massively important. And, I think the movement has been running all this time. But in terms of the Western outreach, it's just running on the spot. It's not happening. It's not mainstream. It's not very effective. And Prabhupada's Pranam mantra, Paschatya Desha Tarine, So I think a lot of that, what will help that is if the feminine side takes permission. This is what I've learned in my charity work. This is what I've learned is that you can't change anybody, but you can actually sort of like live apart from influences that are destructive to you. Yeah. So this is what I try to do. Jyoti Mayi, an absolutely amazing woman. She arrived to join the movement with Mandakini and Ilavati the day of the installation of Sri Sri Radha Landanishwara. Now for us Brits, that's just like, that's D-Day, She arrived on that day from Paris, didn't know what was coming in. And so Jyoti Mayi, she was a translator of Prabhupada's books. The service was taken from her at one point and then given back to her later on. Anyway, she says in her passage that she gave adaptability as being the proof of Prabhupada's intelligence. When they ask you, like, what's your favorite quality of Prabhupada? So she's written down adaptability as proof of Prabhupada's intelligence. And by the way, everybody, get this book. I'm going to hold it up. Get the book. Get the book. Because it's monumental, It's not about, I'll tell you a secret, When in May of 2020, there was this like retreat thing that was, I think there were 12 different programs on Zoom. I'd never been on Zoom in my life. Nobody knew about Zoom. It was the COVID thing that brought Zoom into our lives, I think. And there was this thing that Malati and Vishaka were going to be showing this slideshow of women in Prabhupada's time. And I did not attend that because I thought, what if a man sees me at this women's gathering? He will think that I'm not submissive. This is the God's honest truth. And I spoke to a lady at the Vaishnavi ministry, and she said, that's actually not very uncommon. That is quite common, that the women didn't dare go. So I think the men don't have to be afraid. We're not the enemy. They don't have to be afraid. We're just trying to blossom. There's a word in French, which is s'épanouir, which means blossom, and it's a word you hear quite a lot, in France. We need to blossom in our own spheres. And I think in my case, my children have suffered, people's children have suffered, we've suffered, and the movement is very lopsided. I'm being rather bold now, but there we are. I think that's the thing that needs to be rejigged. But one thing I want to say from what I learned from the God Sisters in this book, is Ananga Manjari, because she told a story of Prabhupada telling about how distress is actually from Krishna. It's Krishna's mercy. And again, that's not a thing to be saying to somebody else, oh, you're suffering, just forget it's Krishna's mercy. I don't mean that. But ourselves, when we are pondering our lives, if we have an entourage of loving and supportive souls, and this is where the woman comes in, loving and supportive souls who are just like feeling, who are empathizing and things like that, then we have the space to understand that Krishna is purifying me. Yeah. And that is the feminine side of the job. So anyway, I loved what Ananga, I won't even tell the story because I think, we don't want to, we need to hurry up. But you can read this story for yourself. And
and you're doing
let me tell you a bit, okay? It is basically Prabhupada in a darshan saying that, happiness and distress is the same for a devotee, which he's put in his books many times. So Ananga Manjari asks a question, and Prabhupada explains it. He said, it's like the bird that looks to the rain, to the clouds for rain the whole time, dependent on the cloud for rain. And sometimes the cloud sends a thunderbolt. So this bird, you can imagine the little bird on its back, and it's still dependent and goes back to that cloud. I mean, I've just sort of like skimmed over it, but basically it's a wonderful analogy Prabhupada's drawing, and I can't go into it now, can I? But it's like the Krishna book. One of the last chapters of Krishna book, it says in there that a non-devotee who's getting their karma will still keep coming back into the material world because karma makes karma. Yeah, I'm putting it in my own words. But for a devotee, somebody who's turned to Krishna, when they have some suffering, that is Krishna himself. And it's not for your damnation or for your downfall. It is to bring you closer to him, because there might be things in you that are not, in line. I mean, I've heard these teachings all my life, but I haven't had the wherewithal to put them into practice in a compassionate way. I've had to learn to be compassionate for myself, because I had a lot of self-hate through all the, through all the difficulties that one goes through. How can I put this? All the difficulties that one goes through with women not being considered, that they're different. And also, I'd tell you another thing. This may be going a little too far, but my husband, he's away sailing at the moment with his friend, and this friend years ago lent him a book. It's an ancient Welsh book, because apparently the Welsh, they've got books that are as old as the Greek and Latin works. So he gets this book, and I'm looking at it, and it's called, I looked it up recently, it's called a Mabinogion, and it's a collection of tales. And in this book, they have a story where somehow there's a planet where men can sleep with the women. The beautiful women, they're all wandering about, and the women don't, need any shelter, or they don't need any, any care at all. And I'm thinking, get this book out of the house, because I don't want to conform to whatever someone else thinks a woman is, should, or could be. I want to find out what it is in my own heart, and I'm not passionate about it, but it's the most beautiful thing. I saw my mother pass away. I nursed my mother. I left her to become a devotee. And we need women like my mother was, not joining the hierarchy to peg other women down. And I've seen a lot of that, and that is heartbreaking for me. So that's where I am. That's what I've learned.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm appreciating your point that it's about blossoming, and that letting other women blossom, and your appreciation of your God sister stories in the books is about you also offering your love and respect for them, and for the way that they've blossomed and shared their stories. So thank you for sharing. Yes, and your own mother as well, in her own way. Thank you. And so, how did you observe Prabhupada adjust to time, place, and circumstance?
Well, one story from my personal life is that we were at New Mayapur, and it was the beginning of 1976. And myself and my ex-husband had moved there, and the household didn't even have beds. They didn't have any furniture. We just lived in a little tiny room, and we had brought our stuff from England and our child. And our stuff was contained in 3 tea chests, which were sort of like things you could pick up for nothing. That was it. So at this period, and this is the time probably before Krishna Balarama were installed.
Mm.
Gaura Nitai were installed. Anyway, we were living there. And one of our top leaders went to see Prabhupada to ask him whether the men could have a second wife. So the thing was, that was the most distressing thing to me. Now, we're reading, in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, people are giving birth at 12, and people are marrying 6 or 7 daughters of someone, and this has got 2 or 3. It was like, sort of part of the culture and stuff, which concerned me greatly, actually, to be honest, But then now it's come to my life. This person who's like so close to Prabhupada is going away to India to speak to Prabhupada. Can the men have a second wife? But the thing is, as distressed as we were, there was no question of leaving. You see? And again, I've only reflected on that now, preparing for this talk with you. There was no question of leaving. Even the worst thing could happen. Because we were that surrendered. We were that grabbed by Krishna. We were trying everything and anything to stay in the movement, because Krishna is so fundamental. And I'm going to lay a bit of Sanskrit on you now. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati kriyatam yadi kutopi labhyate tatra laulyam api mulyam ekalam janmakoti sukritir not labhyate. Rupa Goswami. If Krishna consciousness is available somewhere, it must be purchased without delay. And what's the price? The price is your eagerness to have it. So somehow or another, we were grabbed by that, We were really grabbed by Krishna consciousness, and it was extremely wonderful. I mean, those days in New Mayapur, when I was a pujari, they were the happiest days of my life. I have to say. I used to shut my eyes. Actually, it's a little bit inaccurate to say that Gaura Nitai were there. It was the faces that were there. It's just so ecstatic. And then you sort of like, you're knocked out of it because you have to move, or you're having another baby, or whatever it is, I had to give up that service because I had another child. And I always felt so bad about that, because we had to go and got a house, which was very controversial, and all that. But I'm going to share something with you, which is very private to me. And anyway, I've not finished the story about the second wife, have I? Prabhupada said no in the end. He said no in the end, but even if he had said yes, goodness knows, it would have complicated our lives maximally, but still, he said no. So phew. So that was him acting according to, we're not in the back, we're not at the beginning of creation, we're in the Kali Yuga, we started the movement in the West, we're not there. Actually, what he said, we were told that he said the men can't even take care of one wife. But in a book by Satsvarup Maharaj, which is called ISKCON in the 70s, it says there that he said more. He said, we want to make sex nil. So we don't want more, we want less. What was I telling you about? This heartfelt thing, I've forgotten it now.
Something very deep and private.
Oh, yes. So I had to leave that service because I had another child. And years later, only about, say, 8 years ago or so, I was at New Mayapur, and they were bringing the little deities out to swing them outside the building, outside the chateau. Everyone should visit New Mayapur if they can. It's an idyllic place. So, and I had this friend, and she said to me, "Do you want to come and carry the deities with me? Get yourself cleaned up, come with me." So I got ready, and they handed out the deities, little Radha Krishna, at the front of the altar, where the strings are and everything, handed them out to us. And then when it came down to carry them back, she said, "Come on, we'll go through the back room and take them on the altar." Now, I was not prepared for that. And because I didn't realize I still had this feeling, that I had to leave that service, and I feel so bad. And it's years and years, decades ago. So I walked through the back passage and into the deity room from the back, carrying Krishna, little Krishna, and had to walk in front of Krishna Balarama, Radha Krishna, Radha Madhava, Radha Govinda Madhava, and Gaura Nitai. And I tell you, I was just knocked over with love. It was as if I'd never left. So it's kind of like it's Krishna's there, you know what I'm saying? Krishna's there, Krishna's watching us, Krishna's encouraging us. I wasn't expecting that at all, because I realized how bad I felt about leaving that service. But dare I say that my service to Gaura Nitai is eternal. So
That is
And other
beautiful.
things.
Thank you for sharing. It almost sounds like he was just welcoming you back into his home,
My God,
saying,
it was
"So nice to
sweet.
see you. I missed you. Thank you for
Exactly. It's
coming."
like there was no what's the word? Because I got in trouble for that, and all that,
Yes.
Um, um, but it's as if
Mm,
there was no, as if I never left. There was no, what's the word? What's the word? There was no reproach at all. Nothing.
nothing.
Yeah.
Just love.
I just love you. So this is what we're trying to. This is the message we're trying to carry to the world.
Mhm.
Not put people in boxes. That's how I see it anyway.
Mhm.
So another thing I've learned about time, place, and circumstances, being all through listening to other people talking about Srila Prabhupada.
Mm.
And for example, I've got a whole list here, but I'll just give one, which is that Kushalia David Dasi, who is like a rock star to me,
Mm.
because we were in Paris Temple when she was recording Manasa Deha Gaya. She's so cool, very beautiful girl, very beautiful singer, and Prabhupada, she knew Prabhupada very well. Prabhupada knew her very well. So they're in Calcutta anyway, and she tells this in the book Pond of Love. They're in Calcutta, and Prabhupada's saying, because he adapted, you see, and I've got down here to say as well, perhaps, have I got it here? Yeah, when Krishna Balaram were installed, Krishna Balaram were installed in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavatam in one of his purports that he had the Brahmins from the, whoever, wherever, chanting Brahmins, coming in and doing the chanting and things. But he said we only brought them in so that the people of Vrindavan, the neighboring people, would be able to take the temple seriously and therefore visit the temple.
Mm.
So that was another adaptation to
Mm.
time, place, and circumstance. He said, he does it in the Bhagavatam. He says, we just thought that the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra was the real sacrifice.
Mm.
So the Koshali is in Calcutta and getting ready for the pandal. And so Prabhupada said, it's not customary in India for women to play the mridanga, so the girls won't play the mridangas. And Koshali's face fell. He said, oh, Koshali will be too sad. So she could play.
So it's a double adjustment, because not only is he saying, let's respect the time and place and circumstance of India, like let's not have women play, even though he has always put forward women's capacities to serve and to lead, but then also like, okay, you can play also, even though it's India. So even adjusting to that.
Yeah. I mean, the more I have learned in my recovery, the more that I've learned, it's like Prabhupada was extremely welcoming to women, extremely welcoming, extremely fatherly, extremely kind. Da, 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 da. I mean,
So
how
on
would I
that
know that?
note,
This is it. Just let me finish my sentence and you can go.
sure.
Like, we didn't know Prabhupada intimately. Yeah, you guys these days have got every much as chance as we have of learning to know him intimately, because there's all the books and the videos and everything and the people talking about him. So it's really just the same for me.
Right. And on that note, that he was always caring for and looking out for the women, how did Srila Prabhupada provide protection for you or other Vaishnavis?
Yeah. Well, I've got a list of things that I've learned from the book and from the internet, from the videos. But it's basically summed up. It was kind behavior. And one part of the Krishna book I really like is towards the end, where Krishna, Krishna book finishes off talking about the wives of Krishna. And Krishna, it says that he kept the wives always attached to him by his kind behavior. And that says it all. Srila Prabhupada was extremely kind to women. He didn't treat them like men. Okay, this is a story you can watch. It's in the book, but you can also watch it. Siddhanta Prabhu's Bond of Love, Siddhanta Prabhu's Prabhupada Memories series. Yeah, there's 100 DVDs on the internet, and I've watched most of them and some of them many times. So on Prabhupada Memory DVD 87, around 16 minutes in, you can watch Mahadevi, Devi Dasi, who's in the book, telling this story too. You can watch her telling how she was on sankirtan, that was her service, and they'd come back to New Vrindavana now and again, and they were there when Prabhupada was there. And they were in some sense, there's the building, and they were in this building, but the women were outside, of course, looking in, and they could just see Prabhupada's profile. So they're looking in, trying to get the sight of Prabhupada, and all of a sudden someone brings him a big plate of burfi. So he bites a few different pieces. So he's got bits on a plate which has been bitten, and then he had it sent over to these women at the window. And while it was going over, like the men, like they would have pounced on it unless if Prabhupada had not been watching. He watched that plate all the way to the window, and it was sent to the women, because he wanted to be kind to them. He wanted to, like say, well, you're here as well. I mean, I know that the men, everyone was young, and the men were having to live with women. I mean, to say in the sense that they were all in the same temple. Prabhupada said he was successful because he made that adjustment, but that adjustment was paid for. Purification on both sides. So I understand that. But still, Prabhupada always found a way to be kind to women. Now, one thing I love is Kanchanabala. She joined very early on in the movement, and she was very young as well. So she wasn't allowed to live in the temple. But she had an altar at home. You probably know this story. And she had bark and catkins and, I don't know, shells and different things from nature on this altar. And she wrote to Srila Prabhupada, and he wrote back, "Oh, everything you're doing is approved by me." Like she didn't have it right. She got these things from nature that were special to her, and that's the devotion that Prabhupada approved.
I find it interesting that you respond to this question about how Prabhupada provided protection for you and other Vaishnavis by emphasizing his kind behavior.
Yes, exactly.
Would you share
that's all he wants.
How is kind behavior protection for the ladies?
Because women, I mean, this is just how I see it. Women want to feel that they belong and that they're wanted. And that's the thing that we didn't, I mean, I joined the movement at, I was still 16 when I got in the van. And the next day I was 17. And I'd never been away from home before. And the brahmacharis that had, made me a devotee, that I'd gone to visit in Manchester, I would talk to them and this and that. And we went up to Scotland because I wasn't old enough to join in England, because the age of majority when you could leave home and do stuff without your parents' permission was 18, and I wasn't 18. So Scotland, it was 16. So I went up to Scotland with them, and they were there and I was there for a few days. Let's say 3-4 days, right? And so I'd see them when we'd go to Mangalarti. I'd see them, and throughout the day we'd go on sankirtan and everything. And one day they were gone at Mangalarti. So I said to my friend, "Where are the brahmacharis from Manchester?" She said, "Oh, they've gone back to Manchester." I said, "They didn't say goodbye." She said, "Oh, brahmacharis don't talk to women." So it's like, from the get-go, you're not wanted. I mean, I understand it now. I tell you what, it's still going on because, I'm saying it with love, I hope, we went to Mayapur in 2010, and there was a play on, and it was Bhakti Marg Swami. He put a really nice play on. And the way he worked it was, you had people on the microphones doing the voices, and you had other people on the stage. So I was one of the voices. And the guy on the stage that played the young Brahmin in the story of Sakshi Gopal was amazing. And he was doing sort of dancing, like modern dancing, and he was extremely good, So I always like to praise people and encourage people. Like I said to you, you said it beautifully. I mean it sincerely, and I like to tell people, so even if it's not a dramatic thing, if it's just they're wearing a nice sari or something like that. Anyway, I went up to this guy and I said to him, this is 2010, so I would be, now maths is required, I would be 54 years old, like I'm not some young chick approaching him, I was there with my husband, I'd been in the play. So, and I started telling him, like, wow, you did a great performance, blah, 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 blah. He just looked right through me. So from the whole time, like it's going on, and you just don't feel like you're wanted. So by Prabhupada showing, they all come under the, in my list, they pretty much come under the umbrella of being kind, showing that we were wanted. That's it. Another one, Kishori. Now, I love Kishori. Kishori, Prabhupada's disciple. What a gal. So she's in the kitchen in Vrindavan, and she is told, you're using too much of this, that, she's cooking an offering, for the deities. You're using too much of this boga, blah, blah, blah. And she's saying, well, I'm just making this for Krishna, da, da, da. You're a sentimental woman, So she saw Prabhupada quite a lot because she cooked for him as well. And so she was telling him about it. I think he even brought it up to her. He wasn't happy that hired people were going to be brought from outside. And you can read this in the Bond of Love. Anyway, so he wasn't happy about that. And so Kishori starts telling him what she's experienced. He said, "You're right, Kishori. You should make so much you should make the prasadam opulent for Krishna," affirming that is the. In fact, she'd been told in the kitchen that Krishna hasn't got a stomach. Like, what's that? So it's like that really affirmed her when she was complaining about some cruelty that had been done to her son. She arrives in Bombay. Prabhupada lets her in, sends all the important men out, and the one or two stragglers must have been there, and they're saying, "Oh, she's a Prabhupada." One of them said to him, "Prabhupada, this is in the Pond of Love. She's a sentimental woman. She's an emotional woman." Da da da. And he didn't even leave. He didn't even turn around to the guy. He kept his face looking at Kishori because she was in a mess. She was a mess, because her child had some cruelty performed on it. And he didn't even turn around, and he said, "She's telling the truth," like raising his voice and everything. So that was the support that Prabhupada gave to women. That's another one. He gave support to women. I could go on and on. I'll just do two more. He gave support to women. There's a guy called Sevananda Das, and if you type in Sevananda Das, remember Srila Prabhupada, or you can go, I think it's DVD, the complete DVD will be number 63, perhaps. Anyway, Sevananda Das. He talks about how Prabhupada is with a group of sannyasis, and one of them starts off saying, "Oh, there's a Maharaj in I could be getting the places wrong, but bear with me. There's a Maharaj somewhere that wants to give us a palace and some land." And someone goes, "Oh, the women could be sent there. All the women could be sent there." And everyone's having a laugh. Then, it's hurtful. It's hurtful. So then it carries on. Someone else pipes up. "Well, there's, I'm only saying what's on the internet. I'm not making this up. And we didn't know about this, obviously. The Prabhupada was sticking up for us, but he did stick up for us even when we weren't there. So someone says, "Well, in Kenya, there's a tribe where the young boy has to alone go and kill a lion armed with only a short spear, and then he can get married." And then someone pipes up, "Oh, too bad there aren't any lions around here. We could have made that a criterion. There aren't any lions, in the West. We could have made it a criterion." It's funny if you weren't there, I was there, and the women were supposed to be getting sent to Australia. It's not that funny to us because we lived this, So there's this talk about there's no lions here, so we unfortunately can't put that as a criterion for getting married. And there's this guy Sevananda, he's obviously in white himself. I think he's just like because just backtrack a bit, it's like every class you went to, very, very often it was like women bad, sex bad, children bad, Maya bad, household life bad, marriage bad, and the guys that were married had to listen to that. So Sevananda is standing there, and Prabhupada very calmly, and Sevananda describes this as a bomb going off. Prabhupada said, "The pure devotee in his heart of hearts feels sadness or compassion or something, feels sadness for the thousands or millions, I can't forget the number, say millions of women and millions of animals being exploited all over the world." I'm going to tell you my favorite story. DVD number 96, and it's Vamana Dev. He tells this publicly. So it must be it's very early on, because he was sort of in talks with a young lady, devotee lady, to marry her, right? So he's in talks with this lady, the friendly and everything. And his friend then tells him, "Look, she has a child already. And Prabhupada said that a woman who has a child shouldn't marry again." So this Dev, he goes to the woman and says to her, we can't get married because Prabhupada said, a girl with a baby, a child, can't get married again.
Mm.
And so a couple of days go by, some time goes by, and then Prabhupada sent for him. He goes, oh, Prabhupada sent for me. I wonder what he wants. He goes in. Prabhupada said, you have to go to another temple now because you have hurt that girl.
Mm.
And I really love that. I mean,
Mm.
yeah. I mean, there's also some stories like the bus in Vrindavan that broke down. Prabhupada did not go to sleep or didn't, continue his program until the women were back.
Mm.
The bus that broke down in Vrindavan.
Mm.
So there were so many. There were so many stories, honestly.
Mm. Thank you. I'm curious, you're sharing so much inspiration about all of the stories that you've read, the DVDs that you've watched, and soaking in Srila Prabhupada's association, even though many years have passed since he's left this world. And by hearing others share their stories, you're so enlivened by Prabhupada's character. And so I'm wondering for you how your relationship has personally deepened with Srila Prabhupada over the years since his departure from this world.
It has deepened massively, but I have also changed. My changes have facilitated Prabhupada being able to get in deeper. Because I had, when this book was launched, the same day, in July of 2020, this book was also launched. And the result of the experiment of, suffocating women or, whatever you want to call it, Pranada has, who I think, I didn't open my mouth. I'm only just opening it now, she says that this treatment over time produced social anxiety, a deep lack of confidence, feelings of tremendous shame, insecurity, learned hopelessness, self-hate, anxiety, depression, and it included physical and psychological abuse. I'm not going to go into depth on that, but I think that's very true. So I had to, by Krishna's arrangement, just like I could learn to dance by Krishna's arrangement, I came into different circumstances where I learned more about my condition and began to heal from it. And I went to. See, we have relatives that live in France now, and there's a place called Dole, which is, I think it's smack bang in the middle of France, more or less. And it used to be a temple, it's not now. So I went to this place for a look round. There was still a couple of devotees living there, and our relative took us and with his wife, and we spent the day. And there were all kinds of rooms that weren't used anymore. There was sort of like a big warehousey type room, and there were some books piled up and other kinds of books I'd crept in, over time as it was derelict. So I went in there, and there was this picture of Srila Prabhupada. And if I remember correctly, a massive one, like a huge thing, like, 4 foot square, something like that, in a corner. And I walked up to this picture, and it wasn't quite in focus. And I think it was when Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasan in Paris. So, because I recognize that picture, and it's like he was there. He was really there, and sometimes that happens. So I said to him, if you're not finished with me, please empower me for something. So all the things that I've said, that's what I've learned and I've realized over time. And I would like to, I offer myself to try and help women. If anything I've said has made any sense at all, please get in touch with me. I offer myself to help what I've learned and how to not necessarily be angry about it.
Mm-hmm. There was maybe a lot of immaturity and a lot of unhealthy ways of dealing with women throughout the ISKCON's history and in our society. And so, you've been navigating those waters for many years, especially since Prabhupada's departure. he wasn't there to arbitrate some of these conflicts and issues with women especially. And so I appreciate the point you brought up, that through your own unfolding and your own personal growth, your relationship with Prabhupada has also deepened as well. And so by putting in the effort on your own as well to heal, to become more whole, that has also deepened your connection with him in time.
Well, it's not only that Srila Prabhupada wasn't there anymore. Even when he was there, it wasn't the International Society for the Protection of Women and Children, and I get that, because it is the battlefield of Kurukshetra situation. You know, Arjuna said, well, the women won't be protected, you know, the children will also have a hard time, you know, we can't possibly. No, all the energy went into spreading the movement, Prabhupada writing his books, and that was rightly so. And I think sometimes perhaps people of the male species, the renunciation part was the way that they could carry on their Krishna consciousness, and therefore we were just not wanted. And I think, being the artistic type that I am, and being very young as well, I took that to heart, you know, and I had this thing called internalizing all negativity. I got that. I was psychologically you know, diagnosed with that, and I found out later it's actually that's counselor speak for being oppressed, being in a. It's weird that, because I was recently reading about the I can't think of the word of the topic, but it was sort of like something happens to minorities, but we are actually not the minority. Women and children are the vast majority in the devotee community, not even the minority. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, so I get that it wasn't. Yeah, so Prabhupada wasn't there to solve the things anymore, but that was not his main business. He just gave the mercy as he was traveling by, you know, because it was very important that there should be young sannyasis, you know, and go out and get the business done. And many women fell into that, were able to take up that service as well. All the better to get the movement established. So yeah, I've had to, it's not been that long. I mean, I've had to, and I married a very wonderful man, I have to say that. And how was Prabhupada helping me, protecting me? My husband had a dream. He wasn't even a devotee. He was a vegetarian, but he was an impersonalist. And I felt right with him. We've been married 23 years now. And I'm so happy, you know. But when we hadn't known each other that long, and he's become a devotee as well, actually, it's an issue. So when we hadn't known each other long, he had a dream of Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, you can marry Govardhan, but she belongs to me. And I will come back for her. So, I mean, I feel like he protected me there by allowing this man to come into my life. Because if you look at the Vedic thing, it's like, you know, I had 5 children in difficult situations. Yeah. And okay, some of them are grown up, fair enough. But even so, he sent a man to help me. He's so amazing, and I couldn't be happy. So when we were first together, you know, I thought every woman should have this situation, you know, to actually feel protected. Yes. I mean, there's a thing on the, you know, the series of Prabhupada films that Vishaka and Yadav made called Following Srila Prabhupada. There's this one in there where there's an Indian girl, and she's talking to Prabhupada in her language, you know, and she explains what they talked about. And he was telling her to get married or something, or recommended. Let me get this right. He's recommending that she get married. And she said, why do I have to get married? I have you. He said, for shelter. And she said, well, I've got you, you know, but he said it's a real shelter for a woman if she has, you know, a decent man. And I think, you know, the movement, these youngsters that have been born in the movement, the ones that are still around, you know, or your own generations, they should start, I mean, I think you already have started, like creating good men, you know, because this idea, which I was sold, that all you have to do as a woman is be submissive and everything will be sunny and rosy. That is a fallacy. No, that is a fallacy. It's true in certain circumstances. I would die for my husband. I'd lay my life down.
Right.
So I know what it feels like now, and I never knew that before.
Mm.
And everything that happened in my life, it was all done with the best of intentions.
Mhm.
But whatever, basically is what I say, whatever.
Mm. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Your relationship with Prabhupada has deepened in many ways, but especially through the loving grace of your husband and how he appeared to him in a dream. And direct protection of a man, there's a softness that comes with a woman, as you've emphasized, and to having that masculine presence and energy allows that woman to be soft and like you said, being submissive in the right environment, in the right situation is what allows the woman to blossom fully. So
Yeah, that's right. That's why that's why I brought this thing up with this Welsh ancient text, the Mabinogion, I think it's called. I want to find my own way, to celebrate the feminine and my feminine side to come out. It can't be according to someone else's fantasy or trip, It has to be in real time with like I knew a girl, she said, if you want a woman to be an angel, create heaven. And there needs to be energy. We can't do it on our own, like women. There has to be energy put into good husbands coming along, Right. How about this? In the Bhagavatam, there was Prince Priyavatan. He was kind of like cajoling married. He didn't want to. I forget whose son he was, Lord Brahma or someone like that, or Lord Brahman came to him. I forget the exact details, but he didn't want to get attached. This chap was extremely spiritual, and he didn't want to get attached. But and he was promised he wouldn't get attached. I think I'm getting it right. But then he actually did get attached, because if a man is prepared to love a woman, everything's going to go well, because that Prabhupada showed he loved us. I would not even leave if the second wife thing had come in. There's no way you're getting me to leave. I mean, there's people, devotees in the other, channels, or, what's the word? Groups. But I don't want to hear anything that's not coming Prabhupada's chain, if you like. I just feel that is my niche there. Yeah, so it's all about making people feel wanted. I'll tell you a dream that I had. I was on my phone. This is about maybe 4 years ago. On my phone, and I come across this thing. This is a good story. I come across this thing scrolling around, and it's like Prabhupada big picture, and it said, women are not to have any responsibility, all big red letters, so you look who's put that on. I didn't watch it. But I was thinking, forgive us a break, and I went to sleep, and I had a dream, and Prabhupada called me into his room, and he was packing to leave, and he asked me to get something from a cupboard for him, and I was in this dream with Prabhupada, and then he called again, and I had to go back for something to ask something. So I felt that's quite remarkable, because if the spiritual master appears after his lifetime in a dream, he's actually there. This is what I've been told. And in the book, A Bond of Love, Lila Shakti, who was the pujari for Radha Ishwara, and for us Brits, they are the ultimate deities, the ultimate home. She was their pujari for ages, and whenever the German devotees used to come over, the brahmacharis, I mean, they are heavy duty. I've been to Germany. I dare not tell you what I've experienced there. They come and they'd say, women shouldn't be in charge. They'd be grumbling, women shouldn't be in charge. She was the head pujari. And one day, Prabhupada in front of the deities, just a quiet time of day, and he was there by himself, and Lila Shakti was standing next to him for some reason. And he's standing there looking at the Lord. And then he looks at her and he says, are you in charge? She says, yes, Prabhupada. He said, very good. So there's Prabhupada protecting.
So how do you believe that it is important for the next generation of devotees, those who aren't direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada like myself, to develop a personal relationship with him? And how so?
It's very important. It's very important. I'm going to read you something from the Bond of Love, and this is Govardhan dasi. She's in Bhuvaneshwar with Srila Prabhupada. and there's a field in front of him, and there are seeds that have been planted, and he says, looking across this field, he said, this field, these shoots will sprout, and they will become little bushes, and then they will become trees, and then they'll bear fruit. Then you shall see what is this movement of Lord Chaitanya. So that is why you've all got to have a personal relationship with Prabhupada. He's not just any old body. He's everything to us. And I have got my relationship with Srila Prabhupada. I mean, I have a lovely exchange with him when I got my Gayatri mantra, and I saw him this and that many times, and whatever. They're all on the Prabhupada memory, YouTube. You can watch them. But my actual relationship with the Prabhupada, for me as a grown-up, I was a child, at that time. So my relationship has grown through reading his books, through associating with people that love him, and doing some service, and hearing about him from people that knew him better. Just like we read about Krishna in the Krishna book, we may not have been there, but we get the full benefit by reading about it. So that's how I've done it. And also another story in the book, Bond of Love, my god sister Jagatam, she was once talking to Yamuna, and she told me personally the same story, and I've got a little bit of extra information. This happened outside the temple room at the manor, next to this big staircase that comes down. So anyone that knows the manor, it's there, and there was a table there for some reason. So Jagatam says to Yamuna, you're so lucky because you got a lot of association with Prabhupada, and I didn't have that. And, that's why I'm unlucky and you're lucky. And so Yamuna, she was not a violent person, but she slammed her hand on the table. She said, that's not true. She said, if you are following Prabhupada, if you're as best as you can, if you're reading, if you are serving, if you're chanting, all that, you can have a personal, we've all got to have a personal relationship with him. Because then when you die, he comes to get you. When they brought that book out, that was the founder of Acharya booklet, they came up with, in there somewhere, there's quite a poetic description of the TOVP, where they have, I'm not sure if they even got it yet, this display of the universe, and then at the top, somehow or another, there's an idea that the spiritual sky is there, and you live in the material world, and there's something in there in that Prabhupada's founder Acharya book, and they say Prabhupada's waiting there, like when you die, Prabhupada's up there. And so many devotees have seen Prabhupada when they've died, that we've had reports, So, for me, he's everything. He's not just anyone, anyone that's in his line. I think there's major, major blessings. I mean, he's got the key of Krishna Loka. So it's absolutely necessary. And I think in a hierarchical situation where you have people who are very looked up to and all of that, that doesn't mean that every single person shouldn't have and mustn't have. I mean, we must have a personal relationship with Prabhupada because he's our founder Acharya, and that is so glorious. I love the fact that he said, and I love the effects, I love the proof that, as he said, I can't think small, I have to always think big. So he's like, he's monopolizing everything for me, he's monopolizing everything in the conscious world. So I will go with that.
Well, that connects to my last question.
We didn't know him any more than you do. We didn't know him any more than you do. Okay, we saw him and got initiated. I'm not saying it's nothing. That's a big, big thing and wonderful. But it's like you've all got this, you've all got the duty to learn to love him, and you look out for him as well, because what was it now? Prabhupada wrote a letter to Jaya Sri Devi Dasi. This is in the Bond of Love. And he said to her, chant regularly, Hare Krishna, chant regularly, and you will see Krishna talking with you face to face, right? So I'm construing from that, look out for Prabhupada in your life, and he'll be there in your life. Don't worry about that.
Yes.
You know, I've been reading the letters recently, and there's a letter which he writes, somebody very important in India, very early on. He writes a letter, and I think it's before he even leaves India. That's right. And he says, I've got the plan of taking all my contemporary men and women back to Godhead. Yeah. And not only that, but everyone that comes along after as well. So he doesn't do things small.
Yes, thank you so much. And that segues to my final question for you today is, what are some things that you are grateful to Srila Prabhupada for?
Okay, well, what I'm very, very grateful for is the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Very grateful for that. I mean, I could go on for half an hour about the Chaitanya Charitamrita and how I'm grateful, how it plays a part in my life. These are not just books, you know, they actually come in your life. And how it appeared, how the Chaitanya Charitamrita appeared. This is only one thing I'm grateful for. I could say many things, but just to focus on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. How it appeared in my life. There was this marathon going on in America, and they were producing 17 books in a month or something, you know, impossible like that. And all of a sudden, the set of Chaitanya Charitamrita appeared in my little house at near Mayapur, and I started drawing the little stories, you know, for my daughter and coloring them in, you know, little books for her with these stories. How the Vasudev had leprosy, and so they drew a little, you know, like a little worm on his hand because it fell off, and he used to put it back. That story, you know, from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And it inspired me to serve prasadam. I used to serve prasadam, and I used to serve dal, rice, chapatis, sabji. I used to serve the milk, the cereal, the fruit, because I was so inspired, because there's lots of prasadam talk, you know, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it came into my life. And I should preface this with, I have a book. It's right here. It's called, this is the preface, When God Becomes a Drug. Now, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking when you're wonderful, the spiritual bliss that you feel. I'm not talking about when the spiritual bliss that you feel allows you to be abused. I'm not talking about that. But here's what happened. One morning, I was serving the prasadam, and I sat down, and my daughter she must have been about 16 months old. And as I sat down after serving everything, she kicked her milk over. Oh, she kicked my milk over. And my husband at the time said, lick that off the floor. Yeah. And then he got up and walked off, you know. And it's obviously male posturing, but I was so absorbed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I licked that milk off the floor. Yeah. So there's been a couple of instances. Yeah, I'll get the book. When it's not about getting abused, but I was just so into it. I'm not saying that, I don't advocate that people, you know, get so blissed out that you can do whatever you want to them. I don't advocate that, but that's what happened that day. It was in my life, you know, the Chaitanya Charitamrita was in my life. I love the fact that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a thing where Lord Chaitanya is leaving Puri, and he's organizing the Maharaj Pratapa, Lord Chaitanya is leaving, the Maharaj Pratapa Rudra, he's organizing for there to be supplies along the way, so that when he stops, he gets his food and rest and everything. And sometimes he'll be crossing a river. So at every place where he's going to cross a river, I erect a column, he says. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I will go there and take bath in the water there. He said, no, let me die there. Now, I love things like that because it's dramatic and it's, you know, it's really heartfelt. I just adore that. Where are you going to find that? You know, the idea that, like Jagadananda Pandit, who wants to make him comfortable, he brings this sandalwood oil, isn't it, all the way to Jagannath Puri. Lord Chaitanya said, no, I can't have it, you know. So he smashes it on the floor, you know. And then Lord Chaitanya says, talking about the oil. So Jagadananda Pandit goes, I didn't make any oil. Who's told you that? I didn't make any oil. So he's like denying it after. I just love all that. And coming from that, this book, for me, now this is translated by Bhaktivedanta Das, and he's an ISKCON devotee, and he is the friend of Bhakti Chiruswami, and they were both traveling together when they joined. You see, they joined at different stages of their journey, but this is him. So I'm sorry to say this, but like it's properly got Srila Prabhupada's footprints on it. It's important to me. Anyway, in here, it's by Jagadananda Pandit, and it's called Prema Vivata, and it's kind of, for me, it's like an extension. of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this is coming from Prabhupada as well. What am I grateful for? This, because it means topsy-turvy love. Love turned upside down. When it looks like you're arguing, but it's because you love someone. I love that. So I wrote a song about this pastime, about the oil. I ought to try and get that out there before I die, And in here, I just love this because it's about when they were children. Like Jagadananda Pandit and Lord Chaitanya were children together, and they used to argue. And one night, Jagadananda he went to the Ganges. He didn't go home. He went to the Ganges and stayed awake all night. And then Lord Chaitanya came to see him the next day. He said, "Come on, let's embrace. Let's come to my place, for have some breakfast." He said, "I've also not slept all night. I've lain on the stone floor all night." So the children, and then Gadadhar Pandit as a child comes along, and they're all three together. I just love that. And also, what I love about this book, it's very similar to Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's just a little bit more detail sometimes in here, and it's my favorite. So Jagadananda Pandit gets permission to go to Vrindavan. He's not been given it by Lord Chaitanya, right? He gets permission, and so he sets off, and he's thinking, "I don't want to go. Actually, I don't want to be away from Lord Chaitanya. And I'm such a fool. I've asked if I can go, and I don't want to go even." So he goes a few footsteps because he thinks, well, the sooner I go, the sooner I'll be able to come back again. So he goes a few footsteps, and then he gets lost. And this kind of whole meditation, I love anything like that. Just like when the women at what's it called, Hastinapur, and the women at Dwarka, the women at Hastinapur for sure, they're like, no, somewhere or another, Krishna is leaving, and the women are starting to cry, but they don't want to cry because they think it might bring, inauspiciousness. So they're trying to not cry, but they are crying. All these beautiful things where you have opposition.
The relationships, yes. The
so
connection.
I'm grateful, and you know what? Srila Prabhupada, I remember reading this at New Mayapur when the books came out. I was living there. And I remember reading the concluding words to Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I've looked at again over the years, and they're so beautiful. Srila Prabhupada paying homage to his spiritual master. You just feel so connected, like, you guys, everyone that comes to the movement, and also for the next, is it 5,000 years? How many years is it? 5,000? This ISKCON's due to, was it 10? Sorry, I forget the number. But, you just feel connected to this wonderful shower of mercy that's coming down. So I learned the backstory. This is something else I'm grateful for. Giriraj Swami wrote a book about Juhu. And so in this book, he says that Giriraj Swami, is going up to Prabhupada's room at Juhu temple to go on the morning walk. And the rooms are not open. It's all quiet. And Hari Kesh, who's the servant, he says, Prabhupada stayed up last night to complete the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he wrote these concluding words to his spiritual master. And he said then, that there should be celebration tomorrow, meaning today. Giriraj Maharaj is coming, having this conversation. There should be a celebration today, and we should have a feast. So that's the actual, on the spot. I'm on the spot. Backing, or what's the backstory, to these words being written, and all that jubilation of Prabhupada and all that intensity that's gone onto the page, and that comes off the page. And when I read Hridayananda Swami's introduction to the further Bhagavatams, and to me it just seemed to be, a pair with Prabhupada's concluding words and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and also a succession. And this is the movement I want to be in. So that's what I'm grateful for. That's what I'm grateful for.
Thank you so much, Govardhan Dasi. What an honor and a pleasure it has been to be with you today, and to hear your reflections and your beautiful stories and your appreciation. That strikes me the most from this interview, your appreciation for all of your god brothers, god sisters, and your love for them, which has increased your love for Srila Prabhupada. So thank you so much. It's personally inspired me to take more association of other disciples of Srila Prabhupada, to develop and cultivate that personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada, that it's possible. It's transcendent to time and place and circumstance. So thank you. You were definitely plugging the Bond of Love book throughout this entire interview. So
I
you can
see.
get that book from Amazon, and
Yeah.
it is available. So yes. So thank you so much. And
Okay. Do I go off now, or are you just going to leave me here?
I think thank you for watching. Thank you everyone for coming to watch, and Hare Krishna.